What's up guys, today I got another super useful advice video on learning languages. Regardless if you've ever tried teaching yourself a language, you probably heard a foreign language before. And when you heard it, your first thought was probably, how the hell can they understand each other? It's so fast. And then if you've actually tried learning language, you've probably had a moment where you watched native speakers of that language speaking to each other and been like, I learned all this stuff they're talking about, why can't I understand them? Listening comprehension is undoubtedly an important part of learning a new language. It can make or break how the native speakers perceive you. So today I'm going to talk a little about the finer points of listening comprehension and how you can improve at it. Let's go! First off, a little more background detail about where I'm coming from. Listening comprehension has always been my major weakness in learning languages, and from what I've heard, this seems to be a common story among language hobbyists and polyglots. It's the part that we have to work harder on. This is most likely due to the fact that we spend most of our time practicing with lists and articles, maybe practicing writing on our own, stuff that most people would find boring as hell. The contrary is true for people who learn a language in school. They tend to watch a lot of videos and listen to their teachers quite a bit. This results in them being much better at listening comprehension. However, they tend to struggle more with production of the language. So whereas the first type of person would be able to talk to a native speaker but not be able to understand them, the second type of person would sufficiently understand the native speaker but be unable to coherently respond. Obviously, neither of those situations is very conducive to communication, so they both need to be fixed. This video is for the first type of people. Now onto stuff that can actually help you improve your listening comprehension. You know how when you hear a language that you either can't speak or are just starting to learn, the speakers seem to be going at light speed, but then you get more experience in that language and the speed seems to slow down? Yeah, this is actually not because of your ears. This is entirely a mental thing. Unlike native speakers of said language, you haven't spent your whole life since infancy listening to it. Therefore, your processing speed for that language is relatively slow, and it doesn't matter if you listen closer, try to block out distractions, give laser focus, whatever. Much of the speech will still be incomprehensible. This, however, can be fixed with more practice of listening comprehension. Much like I've done, you'll hit a certain aha moment where the language you're studying no longer sounds like gibberish. But you may ask, what should I focus on during listening practice? What do I have to know? One of the best tips I can give is that you have to be able to hear the spaces, as in, you need the ability to separate words from each other when listening. I don't know if this is common conscious knowledge, but fluent speech doesn't separate words. Often the words will run into each other. As a speaker of your native language, you can naturally separate the words from each other when listening, but if you're learning a new language, this will be far less intuitive due to the lack of familiarity. For example, try to read this English sentence. Can you figure out what it says? It may be difficult given that these aren't real English words, but if I say it out loud, he saw me in a blue car. Now can you understand it? In case not, here's what I said. This is essentially what it's like if you can't separate words in your head when you hear them. Of course, this is an extreme example. A more realistic example, like if you're further along in your studies, would be this interaction. See here, you can probably tell exactly what it's supposed to say, but if you're trying to listen to it and expect it to respond, minor errors like these in listening comprehension can majorly hinder your ability to actively converse in a second language. Now, certain languages give more provisions to help learners figure out where the spaces are. One of the most consistent tools a language could have is a regular stress system. Among the languages I've studied, a few come to mind. The top tier of these languages are French, Icelandic, and Polish. These languages will have very regular stress systems. In French, every word has the stress on the last syllable. Therefore, if you hear stress, you know to mentally put a space after it. In Icelandic, every word is stressed on the first syllable, so just mentally put a space before the stress. And in Polish, the stress is always on the penultimate syllable, you know the pattern. For these purposes, though, the languages with variable patterns like Spanish, Italian, Hebrew, and Arabic can't really help with finding the spaces unless you're familiar with the language. And, of course, there's the languages with mobile stress where you can't use it at all. There's another tool you can use for listening comprehension, and it's allophones. Allophones are of course a big deal on this channel, but just in case it's your first time here, here's the definition. So how do allophones help find spaces? Some languages have phonological systems in which some sounds have a certain variant that only occurs at the beginning or end of a word. One of these in English is the allophone set in which voiceless plosives get aspirated at the beginning of the word. There is a caveat here as they also get aspirated when at the beginning of any stressed syllable, even if it's not the beginning of the word. So like in pretend, both the P and the T are aspirated. But if you hear aspiration, you know it's not the end of the word, and that should help quite a bit. Along similar lines as allophones, you can tell where spaces are by knowing about what clusters are allowed where. This is the basic concept of phonotactics, that native speakers intuitively know what sounds can be next to each other in one word in their language. So in English, for example, creak is a word that exists, and cleek is not a word, but it hypothetically could be, while kmeek is not a word and couldn't be an English word, as English doesn't allow plosive nasal clusters. Therefore, anytime you hear an illegal cluster in your target language, there must be a space. More on the level of mental tricks, something that will help you understand better is improving your predictive processing. Predictive processing is the idea that our brains are always trying to predict what sensory input they'll receive next. Now, I must say that predictive processing is classified as a theory and is mostly used visually, i.e. to explain why people didn't notice the person in the gorilla's suit in the basketball throw around from that one video, but I do believe in it for language purposes, and I notice myself doing it all the time, so it's worth it to work on it for yourself. To explain the concept, hey bro, you wanna go get How could the speaker finish the sentence? Is it A, medieval torturing, B, chihuahua race, or C, ice cream? The correct answer is C, and your brain probably has that as one of the options for what term could come next. However, if one of the other terms given above was said, then you might struggle to understand the message and multiply that feeling by 10 if you're learning that language. That's the essence of it. And it reminds me of something that my 10th grade Spanish teacher did that I didn't think much of at the time, but it's actually genius. She would occasionally slow down and pause before finishing her sentences. It was often on a syllable-by-syllable basis, but I now realize that what she was doing was training our predictive processing in Spanish by, in the educational setting, giving our brains a bit of extra time to predict what would be said next. Props to her for that. Now, of course, there's the issue with listening to similar sounds that exist in other languages. Once again, just practice them. Likely, if you can produce the differences, you'll be able to hear them as well. You may also want to keep in mind that your native language isn't special, so that you don't end up saying something ignorant like, those sounds are too similar to each other to ever learn. Think about it like this. You can probably speak English if you're this far along in the video. English has a larger than normal vowel arsenal, so a lot of them sound similar to people whose native languages have less vowels. It's a very common topic among L2 English speakers how their inability to distinguish between certain vowels causes some problems in conversation. Some of these vowel sets are E and I, U and A and and then and One example I hear a lot is the difference between these two words, which of course has fame because one of the words is vulgar. If you need help with these, by the way, this is beach and this is bitch. I ain't monetized, so I ain't worried about that. I have another example specific to Arabic, although it can be applied in certain other languages. For a while in learning Arabic, I had trouble differentiating between the normal consonants and the emphatic ones. However, when I got to take Arabic in college, the instructor said that the main difference between the groups of consonants from the listener's perspective was actually the vowels surrounding it. Arabic has an allophone system in which a vowel will get pushed back in the mouth if an emphatic consonant is on either side of it. To demonstrate, there are the pairs hel and khal and saif and saif. Be aware that this could be a possibility in whatever language you're learning. To finish off, I'll run down what we've learned so far and give a complete synopsis. To improve your listening comprehension in a second language, you need to practice listening a lot in order to slow down the language. But what exactly do you need to practice? You need to practice separating the words you hear in your head so that you can apply meaning to them. Familiarize yourself with the stress patterns of the language in order to aid with this so that you can use the stress to find the spaces. Learn the allophones, in particular those that can only occur at the beginnings or ends of words. You may also want to practice predicting what's about to be said, much like you already do in your native language. And if you're having trouble differentiating similar sounds, being able to produce them can help, or you may want to look instead at how they affect the sounds surrounding them. As far as what to listen to, any type of media can help, some more than others, but comparing music genres and types of media for their usefulness is a topic that deserves its own video, so subscribe if you'd want to know when that video happens. But what I'll say now is that in-person interactions will rapidly accelerate your progress, but you can still use the rest of the advice here as training wheels before trying to have a conversation. Thanks for watching.